Hey guys, what's up? My name is Jason and I want to talk to y'all today about how I was able to fit 34s on my 4Runner. Now, you can also use this as a guide for running 35s, but there may be a little bit more aggressive chopping you'll have to do, a little bit more cutting. So, just use this as a guide of how I fit 305 70-17s. You may need to tub if you go to 35s. I really wasn't willing to do that. So, this is a little bit about kind of how I'm running these 305s and also a little bit of kind of introduction to the Summit or SSW wheels and kind of why I made the switch from my -38 offset, which is a much more offset wheel, to my -25, which actually just gave me the perfect balance of how to fit those wheels in there with no real rubbing. So to start off with, this is a 305 70-17. Now I'll throw up a chart over here and kind of compare what a 285 70-17, which is what I think most of you guys are probably running if you have a lifted 4Runner. So I'll kind of show you guys the difference in comparison there. So the height on these is going to be just under 34 inches. You can achieve this same height look with a 285 75-17. Now you do kind of run the risk of getting that like pizza cutter look on it because they are quite a bit more narrow. If you look at somebody like Overland Engineer, you look at his setup, I think his looks pretty good as well. So maybe the 285 75 is the way to go. Now for the most part, this is going to be for someone who does off-road pretty heavy. You can get away with a lot more if you never take it off-road. You can probably just do a little bit less cutting, but if you do want to take it off-road, I would recommend that you do at least what I have done here. But if you go with something like the SSW, the Summit wheel, then you're gonna get that -25, which is going to give you that poke where you're going to be sticking outside of the wheel well, that nice aggressive look, but you're also not going to do so much width that you're going to do a ton of damage to your vehicle. So let's go ahead and kind of look at what I have and show you guys a little bit more about these wheels as well. All right, so these are the Summit. Well, now it's called SSW. There was a name change recently, so that's why you'll see Summit, but also hear me say SSW. It's the same company. So these are wrapped with a ridge grappler here. These are 305 70-17, so that is kind of like a 34. So because it is a wide wheel, it will stick outside of the wheel well pretty much no matter what you do. But before I was running -38 offset and it was just way too much for what I'm doing. And people ask me all the time how I'm able to run these when I'm not tubbed back here. This is kind of a video showing you guys kind of how I have this set up and what research and what I've done to make them fit. So the first thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to cut this front bumper. Now I went with a pretty aggressive cut here so I could fit in this C4 edition right here. Now this isn't a full on bumper. I'm not sure that it could take the full weight of the vehicle on it, but that is going to be better than just this part taking the whole weight into it. So I feel a little bit more comfortable with this. Now, if you have a 4Runner, you know that the original bumper comes down to like maybe here or so. So you don't have to necessarily go this aggressive. You can just cut, like let's say it comes down to like here. You can just cut this little back part off. Now Trail4R has a article about that. I'll post it up here, but he basically kind of just cut this little section that's back here out. But I would definitely recommend that you think about considering the Viper cut. Now I'm not a big fan of the super aggressive cut without this, but some people really like it. But you just need enough to be able to have the tire clear, right here. So the next thing that I would recommend, a tank skid here. Now there is the washer fluid reserve in here, and you can see it still does get kind of close. When it's fully flexed, I still haven't had it hit yet, but this is fully cranked. So you're seeing how close it gets. This skid right here, I'm not sure that it could hold the entire weight of the vehicle, but it will prevent the washer skid from being completely destroyed by the tire if you're, let's say, completely flexed and, mashed up in there. you're likely not going to destroy anything in here. So I would definitely recommend doing that as well. Now, I would also recommend that this plastic piece that's right here, this is just the liner. So you can see in there that, there's quite a bit of cutting. Like I said, I think it comes down to somewhere in here stock. So that's a pretty aggressive cut. So the next thing I would recommend is an SPC upper control arm. Now I will be switching my suspension out very soon, but I will be keeping this SPC. So the reason I really like the SPCs is that it gives you the ability to move the tire, the wheel, the whole wheel itself forward or backwards so that you can get that much more adjustment. Let's say you're rubbing in the front, you can move the wheel a little bit further back where you can cut. Or if you're rubbing back here, you can move the wheel a little bit forward and you won't rub back here. I have a positive, I believe it's caster or camber, I can't remember which one, but I think I have a positive 3 up here. So I have my wheel pushed +3 from stock, so I don't rub back there. It's likely that you're going to need to do a plus because most tires will rub in the back, and you can always just trim the front. It's not really an issue. So I have pushed it forward. I believe this can go up to a +4. Now with my old wheels, I did rub a little bit back there still, and you can kind of see if you look right here where it rubbed the paint off, but I have not had that issue since I switched to these wheels. Yeah, the +3 is good for me, and it gives me enough room up there and also enough room back there to really run the wheel. Now I'll talk a little bit more about it afterwards, but there is also a bump stop in there. I got that from Duro Bumps, and that basically keeps the tire from mashing up there because it's such a big wheel. If you're fully flexed on that side, then it's possible that your wheel and tire can go all the way up to there, really damaging this. It's not as big of a deal on the front. The back seems to be the issue because people kind of forget that the back wheel and tire still need to be focused on because you can really mash it up in there when you're flexed out. So I've kind of moved the wheel so you guys can look back here, but if you have a 4Runner, you'll notice that typically there is an end cap here, and usually beneath this is silver. Now if you want to run bigger tires, pretty much guaranteed you're going to have to end up losing this cap here. It's a little plastic cap. I think it's probably about that big, and it fits in there pretty nice, and it kind of just makes it look a little bit less kind of messy. But I went ahead and just plasti dipped that, and from a distance, typically don't notice it, but obviously if you get right up on it, you can see it. So you'll also notice that this little plastic liner in here is obviously cut right there, and it typically will go all the way down in a stock vehicle. Now that's just not possible to be there. If you can see here, the wheels would definitely rub, even not flex or anything, just sitting here in a parking lot. So that has got to go. Also, it is not stock that this is angled like this. This typically goes down right here. So, cutting this to here isn't really an aesthetic thing. I don't really notice it at all. Now, there are people that will cut it here and cut it down like that. And it kind of does fit the natural slope of the fender here, but I found that since I switched to these wheels, I haven't really needed to go any further. Now, had I kept my old wheels, it's very likely that I would have had to keep trimming out here, and that would definitely be a noticeable change from the outside, where this is pretty much tucked away. Now, also back here, you'll see that this is definitely not Toyota factory work here. This is hammering the pinch welds. There are some things right here, metal pieces that stick up, and they will definitely hit your tire in here. So, these are hammered down, as well as, this is cut pretty significantly as well. So if we're looking at it here, this comes out a lot more, but cutting it to here really doesn't change anything. So cutting that really doesn't, hurt anything too much. But, a lot of people are kind of scared to do that. If you're just going with like 295s or something like that, a little bit smaller, you can probably get away with keeping this cap on and cutting this right here. That'll probably be just fine. Now cutting over here to the other side, you will see this is RSG, which has done my body mount chop. Now, you will definitely have to do a body mount chop if you're going to run 34s or even 33s on this. There's just really no way around it. Even with my 285s, I still needed to run this because I was running such a wide offset, or a negative offset, that I was rubbing even with 285s. Now, there's a lot of people online that will tell you, whatever you want to hear. They'll say, all you gotta do is cut, do a body mount chop, blah, blah, blah. Don't listen to that. This is a pretty extensive mod going from 34s or 35s. So just know that you will have to do some decent cutting if you actually off-road it. Now, if you don't really off-road and you just stick to, dirt roads or whatever, then you'll probably be fine with maybe the body mount chop. Maybe you won't have to lose this cap, but you'll definitely have to still trim up here. And I saw Trail 4R did a article where he just cut down here. And yeah, I mean, there's definitely still some work that has to be done in the back if you really want to get in there. So I do have some bump stops on the back here as well as the front. And that basically just prevents the suspension from going too high and rubbing and hitting this. I do know people that have had this knocked off from the tire coming up too high when you're like really flexed out. So the bump stops will definitely help, but that's really in the rear, the only thing that I've done. And I'm not sure if you can see them, but I have them on both the back and the front. There's definitely different things that the tire can hit. You can hit up here, you can hit back there, and you can also hit in the suspension. So there are some things with offset, tire size, with wheel size, things like that you're going to have to consider if you want to run a larger tire. All right, so I'm going to try to explain this with kind of some stuff that I have on hand. Now, because my site here is so trashed with shotgun shells and stuff, I figured I might as well put these to use before I clean up the site. But this is kind of how I'm going to show you guys how this works. Consider this is your tire here. This is the back of your wheel well, and this is the front of the wheel well. So your driver's seat is going to be right in here somewhere, and up here is going to be kind of where your front bumper is. Now this is going to represent your upper control arm, which will be pretty close to the tire, if your setup is kind of this way. So this is going to be a 0 offset here. This is going to be a positive offset, and this will be a negative offset. Now, as I said before, I have a negative 25 offset, so my offset is going to be a little bit further back, whereas if you get a TRD wheel, you'll be on the positive side. The zero caster is probably what most people are running. So let's say you have a 0 offset and you're turning, you are going to have a decent amount of play. You're going to be able to turn without hitting the back or the front, and you're really clear of this upper control arm. If you have a negative offset, you are going to be out further, and you're going to run the risk of hitting the back here or the front. So you run the risk of hitting both of those. But if you have, like, let's say my negative 38, I was all the way out here, so I'm hitting the back and the front, so I had to trim everything to make that fit. I'm a little bit further in with the negative 25, so I'm running a lot less risk of hitting that. Now, on the opposite side, if you are running a positive offset here, where the connection is right here, you will be easily able to clear the rear and the front here, but now you're risking hitting the upper control arm with your tire there. So basically, if you want to run bigger tires, you're likely going to have to run either a 0 or a not so aggressive negative, because if you're running a positive with 305s, you are for sure going to hit this upper control arm up here. But if you're running, let's say, a 0 to maybe somewhere in between, you're giving yourself a lot more room to move forward and back when you're turning, and you're also not risking hitting the upper control arm. So another reason that I went with the Summit or SSW wheels is because you maybe have seen another video I did. I'll put it somewhere up here, where I talked about this Napa compressor that had 300 liters per minute speed. Now, I compared it up against an ARB twin, and it actually beat that out. Well, unfortunately, they stopped making those, or at least they stopped selling them in the US. But SSW has a compressor that does that exact same speed, and I think it's like about 80 bucks more. But since you can't get the Napa ones anymore, I think it's a really great deal. So I'll likely be switching over to that. So kind of another reason why I liked these outside of just the fitment is, you know, the price on these. So I think these were like $225 each, which compared to my old wheels is about $100 per wheel less. Now that is really important to me because I wanted something that I can get a fifth wheel when I actually go with a rear bumper or anything like that. So the old wheels being like almost $400 per wheel, adding another wheel just made it seem like, you know, a ton of work. So that's why for these, I really like them because, you know, you get a high quality wheel with the nice offset, the nice wide wheel, and you get it for a price that isn't, you know, gonna completely break the bank for you. I think this is a nice balance of style, of price, and just, you know, all around a really nice, aggressive looking wheel. If you do have a Toyota and you're thinking about running 35s, 34s, or if you're thinking about running, let's say these Summit or SSW off-road wheels, then I think the best thing to do is to kind of go onto some pages on Instagram, you know, especially with SSW. I scrolled through and I found similar vehicles to mine, you know, kind of the same coloring, same kind of parts and stuff like that, and kind of just see how it looks. But I think you probably get away with everything that I talked about here today if you're trying to run the 305s, the 315s, possibly the 35s, although like I said, you may have to do an extra step, a little bit more trimming here and there to make it fit. So that being said, guys, I want to thank you guys for checking out this video. I will see you guys in the next one.